after we land.
Great. And second question, this being the last voyage again, when you return to Earth, are you going to be doing anything special to button it up, to prepare for, whatever, for storage, anything special compared to other flights that you might have been on?
We're probably not the best ones to be able to answer that question. The way it works is Kennedy Space Center basically gives us the vehicle at launch, and we only get it while we're on orbit, and as soon as we wheel stop, it goes back to Kennedy Space Center and they own it again. So we're just borrowing it from them. But after it lands, they're going to have to go through some processing to safe all the systems, to get all the hazardous chemicals off and all those sorts of things, and they're going to do some additional preparations. But the plan for Discovery right now, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum has laid claim to Discovery, and as I understand it, that's where it's going to head. And so they have to do some preparations, have to put it back on the 747 carrier aircraft to bring it there. But as far as all of the detailed preparations are going to happen, I'm not familiar with exactly what all those are going to be.
Hi, Dan Billow from WESH-TV. A question for Nicole. You mentioned your experience here at the Kennedy Space Center, and you're obviously aware that a lot of people are getting laid off. Can you just give me your perspective on that, your thoughts on that as far as the end, maybe from a perspective of someone who knows the people here so well?
Well, I think that you can't answer that question without the word sad coming to mind. I think it is certainly going to be a sad time. We've already seen quite a few people walk out the door. We've had the chance to come down here and visit several times throughout our training flow, and I think what impresses me the most is the spirit that is here with these people, and it's been here forever. I mean, this is definitely one of these places where people come to work because it's a heart and soul thing. It's not just a job for them, and you see that in every aspect of the work that goes on here, and we are truly thankful for that. And I think it gives us confidence in the vehicle and the workforce and in the mission that we're going to fly, and know that we'll have success because of them. And I think it's just really nice to see when we go out to a facility, knowing that some of these very special people are going to be leaving, and still to talk to them and feel their excitement about the participation and the opportunity that they've had to work on this magnificent program. I mean, look at the vehicle behind us. You cannot be anything but impressed by what you see here, both in the hardware and the people. So, yes, sad, but it's really nice to see the real spirit that comes from the people that have worked on it.
Kevin Oliver with WFTV. Another question for Nicole. Before the Atlantis had the extra mission, you were scheduled to be the last female to ride on a space shuttle. Does that distinction carry anything to you? Mean anything?
Well, for me personally, it's really nice to have the opportunity to fly again on the shuttle. I'd like to think that we're not really looking at it that way anymore in terms of women flying or men flying. It's we work as a really nicely integrated crew, and for me, it's personally nice to know that I don't feel that as a distinction. I hope that what we do with these final missions is celebrate this program and the vehicles, and kind of instead of looking at individuals and their last opportunity to fly on it.
Hi, Michelle Spitzer with Florida Today. Nicole, you can keep the mic. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary of the ISS being continuously occupied. I know you spent some time up there. Can you talk about what was the hardest adjustment for you to life up there? Was it eating, sleeping, communicating with family?
Everything about the station experience for me was better than I expected it to be. And I had very high expectations of what it was going to be like. And there's a couple other guys here who could speak to this as well. But I think ultimately the most difficult thing is just not having your family there. I mean, that was it. Although our communications that we have set up there now are really wonderful. You can call down essentially on a phone to talk to your family. We have video conferences once a week. There's email. So there's really an open line of communication that certainly helps. I've always been one that in these training experiences that we have and getting ready to fly, there's such cool things that we get to do. And it could be, I think you could use the word perfect if you could have those special people in your life sharing it a little bit more with you. So.
Open question for any of the crew. I'm Mark Ratterman from Talking Space, and my question's about how you do the impossible. If a friend or a neighbor, maybe a student in school or university, asks how to move beyond what seems difficult or impossible, from your experience and success, your education, training, what advice would you give? How do you do the impossible?
That's a really good question. You know, really, I think we don't look at this as the impossible because the way we've trained and everything else, and that's kind of the things out in life that look like impossible, you do them one step at a time. You know, you kind of set your goals, you kind of look at the big picture, see how things that you want to do, and then you just attack those problems day in and day out. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things is that every day you got to get up and do your best. And as you keep doing that, especially with a team, you kind of get the synergistic effect. You know, one person can do one thing, but you know, when you have a whole group of people, I mean, every time we look at this amazing machine, and you go, it's amazing that humans can build something like that, that we can take this ship up into space and make it happen. And so to me, the thing that really makes that difference is that we have a whole group of people that are working together, that are trying to do these hard things, and then they're no longer hard, they're not impossible, they become easy. So, you know, for the people out there that are trying to do those things, you know, set your goals high and keep working hard, and you'll get there, and the impossible will be possible.
And one more question from me for the commander or pilot. Would you mind describing an RTLS for me? Go through it step by step, if you would, and, you know, flying backwards. What would that be like?
Well, it's obviously something we hope never to have to do, and just to kind of explain, an RTLS is if for some reason normally what would get us into this, it's a return to launch site profile. Normally what would get you into this kind of scenario would be a loss of an engine, a main engine. We have the 3 main engines plus the solid rocket boosters. So one of those main engines failed very early in flight. We'd be returning back here at Kennedy Space Center. And basically the profile is a pretty interesting one. You kind of alluded to it. You basically fly up, and what we're trying to do is basically burn out all the fuel in the tank so that we can separate from it safely, and then obviously be in a profile that we can come back and land the space shuttle back here, the orbiter back at Kennedy Space Center. So there's definitely a lot of dynamic phases of flight. It would be a pretty exciting ride, and like I said, hopefully it will be one that we don't have to do. But we're well trained in it. It's amazing the amount of detail that we've gone into to actually make it happen. There's some interesting parts of the flight as you're going away from this. You're actually pointing back towards the site but flying backwards because we've already built up so much speed leaving the launch site, and then eventually our velocity turns around and we start flying back towards the launch site. Again, all the timing is working to get the external tank empty so that we can separate from it, and then we come back into land. Steve, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would say the thing that's the most unique about it is, as Eric mentioned, was the part where you're essentially flying backwards. You're well out of the atmosphere, so you're not really flying into your plume per se, but you're flying backwards. And as your relative velocity to the launch site gets slower and slower and slower, you're continually dropping the whole time. You eventually reach a point which we call VREL, or relative velocity of 0, where you're actually dropping straight down at about almost 1,000 feet per second. So you're dropping straight down, and then eventually you thrust out of this and you start climbing, and we usually hit about Mach 6.5 or something like that right when the engine's cut off with the tank empty, as Eric mentioned, because the most critical part of that is making sure we separate with an empty tank so that we don't recontact with the tank. Once you do that and you're off the tank successfully, then you kind of hit a standard profile coming in to enter, and when you come in and land just like we would on a regular flight. So it's very dynamic. It's a certified flight mode, which means the vehicle is certified to do this if we were ever to need to, and hopefully we never will.
And just quickly, are you heads up at VREL?
Yes. Yeah, you stay, you're essentially your head's down. As we go out over the water, we're heads down. And in this RTLS, once we declare it, it goes to, what it does is we're still thrusting away, and the system is calculating how much fuel, how much percentage of fuel remaining we should pitch back and start thrusting back. And once we hit that place, it's called powered pitch around, the vehicle actually pitches over the top. So now we're heads up, heading back, even though we're flying backwards. That's how it works.
That sounds like a piece of cake.
Piece of cake.
I really don't even know how to follow that question. Let me ask this one, though, for the commander. you guys originally had a very different flight. You were going to be the last mission in the program, and then, for no fault of anyone's, it ended up being the next to last flight in the program. How did that affect training, and how difficult was it to shift gears like that, kind of in mid-flow, to get ready for this flight? Thanks.
Well, as I think Tim mentioned, we started out as an 8-day mission with no EVAs. Our objective, in a nutshell, at that point was we were still going to carry the permanent multipurpose module. We were going to carry the ELC up, and our job was to outfit station and leave space station in the best possible configuration for after we left logistically, and that was our whole mission. We had the AMS flight, alpha magnetic spectrometer flight. The payload got delayed, so they moved out past us, and then now there's the authorization bill at least has authorized a final flight. So as far as our preparations go, we actually took a launch slip because of some of the changes going on and spreading out the flights a little bit. And then we added the 2 spacewalks. So the last 2-3 months have gotten a lot busier as we had to add in these spacewalks we didn't plan to train for. But all in all, we've been able to keep a pretty consistent schedule, and as far as a crew getting ready to do a different mission, really not a big deal for us. You expect changes late. Things change on space station. We're trained to deal with those changes. We even specifically train more skills-based these days than we used to. We used to train more task-based. And through all the skills-based training that we've done, particularly in the EVA area, we're able to adapt to late changes and handle that in our flow. So from a preparation standpoint, it really hasn't been that big of a deal.
That's all the time for questions we have. If we please have the crew stand for a photo opportunity, we'll get you back to training. Thank you for your time.